But when Steve chose that, I was wanting to soften the blow. Let's start the record with that, so we could deliver demons in a few songs later. Let them know we're Christians, and then we'll do demons.
And then we'll do that one. That's funny. Welcome to Church Jams Now, the podcast where three former youth group kids and current music nerds deep dive, typically into Christian music from the 90s and 2000s, but we've been known to dance around. I, of course, am your co-host, Kylan Savage. With me, as always, as most times, is Mr. TJ Smith.
Hey, man, I'm feeling a little rusty today, so you're going to have to help me out getting back into the saddle here.
Starting off strong. How long have you been sitting on that one, TJ?
I mean, longer than I care to say. Kyle.
I love that. We also have our beautiful producer, Josh Olson.
Hey, guys. I never know how things are going to start off here, Kylan, but I believe in you as our trusty host.
Thank you. And if I squint really hard, I think we have two guests this evening that really need no introduction. We have Mr. Russ Taff and Mr. Steve Taylor. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Sure.
Thank you. Well
you guys
played.
Okay if I call you Mr.? I'm gonna. It's hard not to.
Mr.
It's
Russ.
hard not to. Mr. Russ, Mr. Steve.
Yeah.
Well, Russ said earlier Steve's a professor, so maybe we should call him Professor Steve.
Yeah,
that's true.
exactly.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Exactly.
We just need to make sure we get everyone's titles correct.
Yes, right.
Yeah, we want to get it straight.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on our show. This was when we received the information that we were going to talk to you, because Josh knows everything first. Josh is the real brains behind the operation. True. And when he told us, I don't know what TJ's reaction was, but I started freaking out.
I flipped out.
Yeah. And started telling everyone in my life. And about 75% of them were like, that's amazing. And the other 25% were like, okay, I know you do a podcast.
Calm down, buddy.
Like, thanks, Mom. So I just want to, usually on our show, we talk about origin stories, and like essentially, how you grew up, how you got involved in Christian music. I will say the two of y'all are legends, and a lot of that information has been given much more succinctly than we would be able to really dig in. I'm definitely going to point to the interview that Russ did. So I really want to know, one, why we're talking tonight and how you two got connected, because I am incredibly fascinated by that.
Go, Steve.
Well, I mean, Russ and I knew each other back in the 80s when we were doing music, and I was familiar with Russ, 4 or 5 years before that, because of his work with the Imperials and Trumpet of Jesus and all those great recordings. But I got to know him better, and we did some shows together, and he and his wife were always really kind to me and even let me stay in their house in Nashville when I was recording, I think the I Predict album. And we stayed more or less in touch since we both live in Nashville. We see each other every few years. But about 2.5 years ago, the band that brought me to Nashville, Chagall Guevara, we did a reunion show at the Ryman Auditorium. And because we were offering absurdly expensive seats for certain special people who wanted to pay an absurd amount of money, we said, we'll also host an after party the next night at Jack White's club in Nashville called the Blue Room. And we promised that there'd be a jam session and we'd have some special guests. And so Russ agreed to come that next night and be one of our special guests. And because I hadn't heard Russ sing in a long time, he's got one of the all-time great voices. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you ever wonder where Caleb Followell of Kings of Leon got his voice. Just check out Russ Taff, right? There's no way that you can grow up listening to Russ Taff. So, but I hadn't heard Russ sing for a while, and I just kind of assumed that, Russ, close your ears, but I just kind of assumed his best days as a singer were behind him. And so, so anyway, we were planning to have Charlie Peacock come and do Down in the Lowlands and have Russ sing it because he had recorded that song for his self-titled album back in the day. And then Charlie got sick. So Jimmy Abeg, who was in a band that I was in, Steve Taylor and the Perfect Foil, and had played with Charlie before, he said to Russ, well, let's do the song anyway, and we'll, kind of do it as a jam. And so Russ started singing the song, and it sounded great. And then guitar solos started to be traded. And then I think Jimmy pointed to Russ and said, go. And Russ isn't holding a guitar, so all he can do is riff with his voice. And I'm telling you, it was electric. Like the whole place. We all saw like we were all going to church. And and he was not just, not just was his voice sounding great, but it was just like passionate and powerful and bringing the spirit down. And so afterwards, we were all talking about it, and all of us kind of agreed he needs to do an album that sounds like that. And he's done fantastic albums in the past, but this was something we heard that was just sounded new to us.
Yeah.
So that's where the idea came from. And then a mutual friend of ours agreed to help fund the project. And John Painter, who was also a longtime collaborator and was in Steve Taylor and the Perfect Foil and was there that night, he had been hearing Russ. He grew up on Russ's music, but then he had also been hearing him sing for the last 10 or 15 years because they went to the same church. And so he had a real passion for what he thought this record could be. And so he became the producer, and I just kind of helped put it all together and, oversee it. But
there you go.
We're just really happy with the way the project turned out. And it's one of my favorite things I've ever worked on.
That's amazing. All right, now, Russ, tell me everything that was wrong with what Steve just said.
Exactly. I got wrong.
It's all he was right on, dead on, Steve. Good job.
First time.
That's awesome. I think I saw, maybe it was on your Kickstarter for this album too. There's the comparison to like trying to do what Rick Rubin did with Johnny Cash and the later stuff, and I definitely think that's apt. I think it's definitely showing off Russ's voice in a new sort of light.
Right. Russ, what do you tell him about the recording technique? Because that was different than what you were used to, I think.
Well, I've been recording a very long time, and you get used to microphones, Neumanns, and Telefunkens that they fit your voice, and preamps and things like that, and the EQs on the earphones and stuff like that. And so I'm very, very comfortable with that. And it's like walking into your own living room and sitting down. You just know where everything is. But going into this record, Steve said, well, you've done all that before. You've done that time and time again. Let's do something different. Let's do something that you haven't done before. And it was real intriguing, but I didn't know how hard it was going to be to surrender and to trust. The way the tracks were cut and the way John produced. And I'm used to doing vocals, laying down vocals with an acoustic or piano, and then the producer begins to build all around that, and then you come back in, and there's this orchestra and everything else, and you come back and sing. But they were wanting something just honest and real and not thought through, and not me go home, man, I'd love to do that lick here and do that lick there. And so we started it with the first song, and I would sing it through like 3 or 4 times, that sort of thing, and thinking that, okay, this is going to be it. They're going to start, a level of flavoring it and doing all this. And then it would be this big monstrous thing that I could go in and sing to. But after like 4 passes, John and Steve saying, okay, let's move to the next song.
And that was it.
And they liked what they were getting right off the bat. And I'm not used to that. Right. I like to think it through. But what they were looking for was something that wasn't thought through. That was just
from
there.
The gut.
Yeah. And just from the gut and not thinking, just singing. So, and even the microphone that they had me on, it was different. Right. And it was one of those that just was right there, and you could breathe and you'd hear it. But it was hard. It was just hard because I know how to do this, but it's like Steve said, I've done this for years and years and years, but on this record, let's do something different that hasn't been done before. And like I said, it was very intriguing, very, very intriguing. First of all, to have the opportunity to do this, and for Steve and John to see something that that they thought would work. But there were several times it became hard. Yeah, because I just felt. This is hard, and do I want to do this? I've done everything. Yeah. You sit home, count your Grammy, whatever. But to do something new and unique that you've never done before, and the challenge that comes with that, and just to be able to dream of a new sound. Something that would color a different color that, it's like everybody for all of my career, everybody loves that high screaming voice, to where I do everything so high and hard, distorted. But what Steve and John were looking for was let's focus on the lower register of your voice. And no one's ever done that before. It's always, they like that loud, hard, distorted, passion. Right. But to be able to sing a song on the lower register and deliver it with passion, that was new. That was just new. But I remember one day I just had a meltdown. I really, really did. And I didn't know if I wanted to do this. And it got hard. It just got hard. I was getting to know John as a producer, and in the studio with Steve, we were friends on the outside of the studio, but you get him on the inside and he turns into an animal.
I've heard stories. Yeah, I totally believe it.
So anyway, I just had a meltdown, and it's like, guys, this is not comfortable. Right. It's not comfortable. And I met Steve, said, let's meet and talk. And so we began to talk, and I was troubled. I was just, because I didn't know if I could do what they wanted. I really didn't. Right. I didn't see the vision of what they were going for. And I was like, man, I don't know. And Steve and I talked, and Steve said something that quieted me down because I trust him so much. He said, Russ, I won't let you embarrass yourself. And I didn't know, I did, what I was doing was just out of my comfort zone. But, Steve is just one of the most creative people I know, period. And for him to be involved with this is one of the main reasons that I did it, just to be able to be around him and work with him. But after Steve talked to me and just reassured me, Russ, I've known you. I won't let you embarrass yourself. It's going to be all right. Then I could just settle down and surrender to the process and trust him and trust John. And then I began to really lock into what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's just such a testament to how important it is to have a strong relationship, or to be able to build trust, right, between an artist and a producer of any type. I have to imagine, Russ, that having that moment of fear where you're really out on a limb and you're being vulnerable and you're trying something new and it's kind of scary. I have to imagine this album would not have come together without that trust, that thread, that through line of trust with Steve and John as well. Like, it's got to be like just implicit there, or it's just not going to happen.
Well, and there, in a very short amount of time, I had known John Painter, but just in the studio with him, and before getting just pre-record stuff, gathering songs and things like that. He's very analytical. I mean, he listens, why this instrument did that against that track and that sort of thing. Every record. I mean, and so he has a real sense of building a track around a vocal. And his instrumentation is something that I've never worked with that kind of instrumentation before. And it's just so cleverly, wonderfully done as he put all of this together. Yeah. And when we would get something done, and I would go back and look at it, and I tell you, Medals, when I did Medals, I listened to it one time. I never listened to it again. The self-titled record, every record I made, it's like, because I'm always producing, and I listen. Well, I should have done that. I should have done that. And why didn't I do that?
Nothing's ever done. It's just
released. And you can't really enjoy what you did.
Yeah.
And everybody's telling you how wonderful it is, but it's like, man, I should have done that there. I should have done that there. But this is the only record I've ever made that I've listened to it over and over again. And it just, every time, just amazed by it and moved by it. And I don't know why I never listened before. Like I said, I scoped it, or maybe I just didn't feel like for years I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But with this record, I don't know. It's an emotion that I haven't experienced in a studio and on a record. So I don't know. As of date, this is probably the favorite record I've ever made, ever done.
That's great. I absolutely love that. So yeah. I want to go. Yeah. I want to go back just a little bit, and I would love to know how we went from Russ Taff needs to make another record to sort of the conversations that you guys had about doing a covers record and sort of telling your story that way, and then even into like song selection, like how we ended up with the track list that we got. So like, where did this initial idea sort of originate?
Take it, Steve.
Man, I'm still trying to imagine what it would be like to sit at home and count my Grammys.
I know. He just kind of slid that in real fast. You're all just like,
threw that out casually.
I thought, well, I'll go find mine and start counting. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I didn't have any. I could always drop by Russ's house and
count his Grammys. Yeah.
But Steve, between us, we have 6.
That's right. That's true.
There you go. That's great. That's good.
Yeah, we got together at a friend's office around a table, and I think, Russ, you brought your guitar, right? Or John?
Well, John brought his. John brought his.
And we just kind of started pitching song ideas with each other, and then we would just kind of check it out. John would figure out the right key for it, and it was pretty much just like the three of us sitting around a table, right? And I mean, Russ picked a number of them, and John picked some. And then I actually got with different friends that loved Russ and loved his voice, and, got some ideas from them as well. And it all kind of came together. And I think pretty early on, we realized, well, wait a minute, these are kind of telling your story in an elliptical way. And then once they all came together, it's like, well, no, that's not even elliptical. These are like feeling autobiographical.
Yeah, very much so.
A good example. Tell them about Grandma's Hands, because you picked that one too, and that was like, dang, that felt really personal to you.
Well, it's a Bill Withers tune,
right?
Back, I guess, in the '60s, and in the chaos that I grew up in. And you can't talk outside the family, and there's addiction, and there's a Pentecostal preacher who's a drunk. And, but the only safe place I had was my grandmother. And I've never talked about her a whole lot in all the interviews and stuff. She passed away when I was 12. but she was a Pentecostal woman and worked in the fields out in San Joaquin Valley. Her silver hair went down to her waist, and I would go over to the front porch, and we would sit in there, sit and talk. She had rockers on the front porch, and she was the only person that I could tell her, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. You know, the home, Dad's drinking again, and because you can't talk out to family, but Grandma knew what was going on. She knew what was going on, and I would go over there and just sit on her front porch, and she would tilt her head over and comb her long silver hair, and then roll it up and put it on a bun on her head. A little Pentecostal woman, but she would tell me, "Son, it's going to be okay." She didn't know how. She didn't know, but she said, "It's going to be okay. Just trust God. It's going to be okay, and trust God." And so, making this record, I've always loved that Bill Withers tune, and kind of rewrote the lyric to more fit my mom and my mom and my grandma. Using my mother's name, but that song was really dear to me, especially singing it. It just touched something in me that I hadn't talked about or sang about ever. My grandmother.
Yeah.
But I don't know it to be able to with this record to say thank you, Grandma, thank you for just being there, and this scared 12-year-old that didn't know what to do, that you sat on the front porch and told me it was going to be all right.
That's just absolutely beautiful, and I think that speaks to something that for me personally, that like I really connected with on this album. A lot of covers albums that I've heard or that I enjoy, a lot of times it does seem like the idea behind it doesn't go much further than, oh, it would be fun for us to play these songs. Or a lot of times they sound so close to the original song. But what I loved about this was not only the arrangement, but also the song choice. And Russ, definitely your vocal performance throughout all of this. Like, every song made sense. And like, I really, really emotionally connected with. And it felt, or it feels very cohesive and very important, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to
which is hard for like a covers record to
exactly
be like, it
that's
feels
what I'm saying,
cohesive
like,
of all these songs from all these artists from all these decades, but there is that narrative throughout it that does tie together.
The Cross was another song that, between Russ's voice and Scott Mulvihill playing the upright bass, and the kind of choir coming in at just the right time. And I loved that song. I loved, we did a song Demons, which, that was one I suggested right after.
I was going to ask who picked Demons, because The National is my favorite band.
Oh, man, I love them so much.
I had high expectations when I saw that on the track list.
It's a dangerous cover because, the original is in 7/4, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but Steve, I love that you mentioned that, because I didn't want to be the nerd bringing it up, but like I actually, this is a scary thing to say on this podcast, to be honest, but I think I like Russ's version better. Like, sorry, The National, but I think this version grooves well, and it's so soulful and gritty and raw. It's so good.
That's the thing, though. That's my music nerd thing, is The National is one of those bands that I think is really hard to cover. I've heard a lot of National covers, and literally every single one, I'm like, this is good. Makes me just want to listen to the original. This version of Demons is the only National cover song that I've been like, this is absolutely incredible. This does just blow it out of the water.
What I love about the song, it depicts what it feels like to be caught
Right.
in the spiral of addiction and relapse.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me when I sing that song. And it's like, you want to know what addiction and relapse feels like? Listen to this song. It describes that. But it was. Can I tell them, Steve, how this came about and why you why you went to that song? Well, when I had that meltdown, I really had that meltdown, and I have spent so much of my life in therapy just to repair the trauma of my childhood, and then taking all that into my adult life. And but it's you work so hard to crawl out of the hole. You work so hard to build up a foundation again, and it's like knee jerk. Something happens, and you're right back into that hole that you came out of. I remember going out and visiting my mother, and the real problem we had between each other, and I had work to come to deal with all of that, all that stuff growing up. And I would go out there, and she would say, and I'm 35, and she would go, Russell. She always called me, and when she did, I'm 14 years old again,
right.
and all this thing that I built up inside of me just collapsed. And that's why I talk about the relapse, in the sense of, you make strides, and then something happens and you doubt yourself. Something happens and your faith falls apart. Something happens and you're right back down in that hole that you fought so hard to get out of. But I always say this is a powerful description of what addiction and relapse is.
Yeah, for sure. And you can feel it. You can feel it in your performance too. Like that's something that comes up a lot on this show is within vocal performances, whether you believe the person singing the songs or not. And throughout this entire record, it's like we fully believe that that these experiences are lived.
Yes.
So,
and you're bearing your soul
right
to the listener in a beautiful way.
When Steve brought this song, I double clutched. I've never sang a song about demons, and I'm thinking about that little church I grew up in, and them throwing me out if I would sing that song. But as I listened to the lyric, and it took a couple of passes to hook it. It really did. To really, I remember the first time I did it, Steve was like, it's not believable, Russ. Go to a deeper place when you sing this. And it took several tries to really get it in that pocket to where you believe it.
Well, and Matt Berninger is such a unique vocalist too, that I can imagine to be hard to listen to him and be like, okay, now how am I gonna do my thing with this song?
What's my version of this?
He has such a unique delivery style. Yeah. So
well, it helped when John changed the tempo a bit.
Yeah.
To where it flowed more than that other one. I was when we first tried to cut it, and it was just he was constantly pushing.
Right.
And with the tempo that John laid it back, I could lay it back, and deliver it that way. It took when Steve brought that. I said, Steve, what are them little Christians going to think about me singing about demons?
You did it. Like, you did omit the expletive, so they have to be happy for that. Yeah. So whether they like the demons or not, at least you can point to that.
You should have heard the original.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And look, I will say too that there's something about, we also on this podcast really dig in deep on sequencing, and as we've already touched on, there is a narrative authenticity to each song, right, as chapters of your story, but there's also an authenticity in the sequencing of the album itself. And I think Demons falls right where it needs to and tells a part of the story that is absolutely crucial. And if it wasn't there, I would have trouble maybe believing that this was your cover story.
Right.
Wow.
But I don't. I fully believe it. And that's a big part of why.
the whole sequencing was Steve's genius. I mean, that of all the stuff he does great, that guy can program a record. And I honestly, I just stayed out of his way and just let him. I did. John and I did both. And Steve just, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And I looked at it, I scoped it, and it's like, well, it makes sense. I wouldn't have picked that order. I wouldn't have, but it wouldn't have been good. But Steve, I don't know, that he's just incredible at that. He really, really is.
Well, and that goes back to that.
He has the perspective. The trust, right?
The trust we were talking about,
When somebody knows you well enough and they can see from the outside in, and they have a maybe a broader or deeper understanding of your own story in a way that, not to say you don't know your own story, but somebody else can bring a new vantage point to it. And when you trust that person, and like you said, when you can kind of let go and let them do their thing, it's going to help you tell your story. And inevitably that's what's happened, which is just really cool. I also love the variety of this album. I mean, it is versatile. It is broad. It's all over the place. I would never have pictured a covers album with Dylan, Duran Duran, Prince, Blind Willie Johnson. Like, it's insane, and I love it.
It is real insane. I
absolutely
love it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know, and it may be Demons, but Russ was there. What was the song that whenever John or Steve brought to you that you had the most like apprehension about, like, I don't know if this is going to work, that you had to be convinced to cover?
That's a good question.
Demons. I never sang a song like that. Right. Never sang a lyric like that. And all these pictures going around and all of these things. It took me, I'm serious, out of all the songs that's on that record, that one took me the most time to learn how to sing it in a way that I could deliver it. I mean, I'm listening to the original, and the way that guy sings, he's got an incredible nasty voice, and but how can I deliver this? I believe the lyric. I believe, and Steve thought I could do it. And again, if he thinks I can, I'll try. I'll jump in the deep end if he wants me to. But I don't know. I took several passes and then go back and think about it. And I don't need to sing it that way. It needs to be lower, but I think that was the hardest one. I did just, take a run at it. That didn't feel natural, didn't feel right. And then take a run at it again. And I think it was like the third time that we laid it down. And then John, we sent it to Steve, and Steve said that's the direction. That's it. Sing it like that. It's believable. But that was a challenge.
Russ turned it into a soul song.
Right.
It sounds like an R&B song, right?
Yep.
Like something Al Green could sing.
I know. It kind of blew my mind. It blew my wife's mind too, because she's a National fan.
Oh, nice.
Oh, check this out. But she also she only recognizes very specific parts of songs, like choruses and stuff. Right. So the verse was going, and she's like, I'm not sure. I'm like, no, just wait. And then when you start hitting those high notes in the chorus, I stayed. She's like, "What is this?"
That was mine, because I saw the song title and I was like, "Oh man, please let this not be an Imagine Dragons cover."
Exactly. And then, my friends, before they even listened to it, they were like, "What the heck?" It's like, no, you're thinking of the wrong band.
Yeah, not that one.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I'm pulling out my big black book because we have an ad.
Yes, we do. Oh. And when we have an ad to record, that's where we look.
When we need an ad to find, that's where we look. So we moved to the C's, quick, fast, in a hurry.
Oh!
Throw on our specs. We thought our vision was blurry. We looked again, but to our dismay, it was black and white with no room for gray. You see, the word Collide Records.
Land it.
And the plane
was there. I can't do it. It's a plane crash.
Oh, no.
I thought I had it. Collide Records.
I thought I was going to witness something amazing.
I know. Collide is a verb. Hey,
There it is.
Sure,
You
thanks,
did it.
guys. That felt a little patronizing, but thank you.
No, I'm fully on board with that. I liked it a lot.
That was some real quick thinking. That was not rehearsed at all, listeners. I just want you to know this was completely
Yeah.
on
Oh my
the
god!
fly.
If people have
So-
listened to our ads like up to this point and think that any of this is rehearsed, that would just be supernatural.
Oh,
Mm,
yes, it would be.
that's true.
They're like, these guys definitely need an intermission to get their
Yeah,
thoughts together.
yeah, no. We plan this all out
Mhm.
in our mind's eyes.
No, that's so good. That's so good. Well, let's go back to the verb that you mentioned, Kylan. Collide Records is our sponsor today. And, we're down with the DC Talk. And if you guys are down with the DC Talk, and if you're also down with DC Talk on some vinyl wax, Collide Records is the place to go. They've got Supernatural on vinyl, Jesus Freak, Welcome to the Freak Show, and Intermission, the Greatest Hits in double LP.
Oh, they have
as well.
intermission on
They got
vinyl.
intermission too. It's
I'd
orange
be
too,
into that.
which looks
That's
pretty
cool.
cool.
Yeah, that's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Nice.
So if you need some DC Talk vinyl, head on over to Collide Records.
And pay full price, right?
Pay full price, right? Yeah. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Wait, soap on a rope, because it ain't worth hope. That's the only. Hold on. I got this. Marmalade jelly. No, okay, I don't have it. This is. Someone please save
You're so
save
close.
me.
You're so close. So close.
I got nothing. I can't think of another DC Talk song. It's the end of the world as we know it.
An original of theirs. Well, if you want to purchase some records and you don't want any red letters on your credit card statement,
There we go.
There it is.
you can use our promo code
That's why we keep you around.
Church Jams Now.
Yeah, you can use those fingers.
Use
to
those
type in that
fingers.
promo code.
And how much do you get off if you use that promo code?
20%.
So help me God, you will get 20% off
That's it.
if you type in the promo code Church Jams Now at checkout for any DC Talk or anything else they have in their inventory.
That's true. That's true.
Sorry guys, I've been in my own head. I was like, oh my God, what if I stumble through this ad?
Yeah.
And then I just did it,
And they have a good amount of colored wax in their store.
Nope, we're cutting that.
Oh, come on.
No. I mean, we're fully keeping it. We're also keeping the part where I say to cut it.
Yep. Like we do. We'll fix it in post, like we always do.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. So once again, if you go to colliderecords.com, use your fingers and type in the promo code Church Jams Now at checkout, you will get 20% off your entire purchase.
Okay, I would like to know musically as well. Like, were there any songs that y'all kind of struggled with of what direction you wanted to take musically for how you wanted the songs to come together? Was there anything that you and John had to kind of like work through to figure out the arrangement for? Did it all come together pretty easily? What were some of the difficulties with that?
Well, only a couple of them came easy. Only a couple of them. The rest of them was just down in the studio with John on the acoustic with a snare and a hat and trying to find a way to sing it that I believed it. That and I'm pretty hard to convince when it comes to delivering it in a way that I believe it. I mean, I can sing.
Yep.
Lord, give me a phone book, I'll tear into it. But
Yeah.
That's the next album, yeah. Just phone book cover.
Right.
but as Steve and John and I, we begin to look at these songs and how do I take Ordinary World? How do I take that?
Right.
And because it is such a part of my story, but then how do I deliver it with the passion that my story has?
Right.
The story it's pain, it's glory. And how can I take Ordinary World and put all that in that song? And I don't know, maybe I Believe in You. I think that one would the Dylan tune, it just, that we just put up, let's do it. And we did it. I think we didn't struggle with that one at all. Yeah.
Glad you brought that up, Russ.
Nice.
Hey, look at you, TJ.
There we go. You just finally
Physical
physical
media.
Yeah, that's one of my
That's
top 5 of all time. One of my top 5 of all time. Slow Train Company.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
It's great. Yeah.
People Are People was the one that I was the most skeptical of because I love Depeche Mode, and that's my least favorite single that they've ever done.
Yeah.
Oh,
John,
interesting.
yeah, John. Two things. John did a really interesting arrangement of it with the horns and all that stuff. But then Russ turned it into like a. Are you connected it to your own story in a way that made me like the song a lot better? So yeah.
Well, it for me, it was like the song that Tori and I wrote back in on my first solo record was that "You're My Brother, You're My Sister," and I was able to take it in that direction. It's like, look at us, if we don't get along, we're different colors, we're different creeds, but we've got to learn to live together. And I believe in that message. I believe in that message with everything in me, and I talk about it a lot when I go out on the road, especially now. I mean, Lord, what's happening to us? What's happening to the Christians? What's happening to our country? And we're dividing more and more and more. And when I was singing that song, it was like I can stand on stage and declare that I can.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where I took it when I delivered it. It was just that call for unity, please. Please, guys, please, girls, let's get back together. Let's get back to the cross. Let's get back to loving one another.
Yeah. I love that.
It's the simple stuff a lot of times, but we have to be reminded. So I like that you were able to kind of take it back to the simple truths.
It's a really good track too, as well. I think once again, just the sequencing of this whole album is so good. I'm probably going to say that 6 more times because we do talk about it a lot on the show, and I'm constantly fascinated by it.
It's great that you talk about that because, sequencing in a world where you're just listening to one song at a time, it's
a lost art.
It is a lost art.
But it shouldn't be.
It is a big part of what we talk about because we've seen a lot of really bad sequencing. And because we're all album guys ourselves. Like, we definitely prefer albums to singles. And we've seen some really good sequencing too, and it definitely is something that.
But Steve, the sequencing, it was like this song set up this song, then set up this song,
right,
and then set up, and there was no throwaways. There was nothing lost in that. But it was like him picking this song followed by that song, and it's like then every song was powerful because nothing got lost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even the fact that you put Demons, like, it's kind of, you put it pretty high up on the track listing, but then there's another low point I feel during The Sound of Silence that I didn't see coming at all, and that just blew me out of the water. Like, that to me, for whatever reason, because Simon Garfunkel and that song was such a moment and was such an icon, like, that would have been, if I were stepping into this batch of songs and trying to figure out how I was going to make it my own, I think that one would be the one that would intimidate me the most, to be honest. But Russ, you really brought your story to it after listening to the Soft White Underbelly interview, which was, again, incredible, by the way. And what a gift to get to hear your story shared so wonderfully. These songs, they just really hit with that context, and that one especially really moved me because, knowing that you, in so many moments, felt like you were sort of silently suffering, right, in isolation, or stuck in a down in a pit or something. Like the Sound of Silence being this visual and something that we all understand and recognize as a pain that we all carry sometimes, feeling like we can't, connect to others, and we're kind of lost in ourselves. Man, that track, when it comes up, it wallops you. At least it did me.
Yeah.
So, how was that one to record? How did you relate to that song?
Well, again, I could, each song I could sit down and talk to you where I was, when I was, and through my life, through my story. And with that one, when I was singing it, and where I took it inside of me was you're walking and you're going good, but you came out of addiction and you're walking good, but then you relapse and you walk back to that hotel door and you open it and you walk in. It's familiar. Right. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again. Yes. It's like I'm right back here in this hell that I tried to get out of, but it's familiar. It's familiar. And when I sang that, I got chills because in my mind, I could just see that. You get comfortable in the darkness. You get out of it. But when you open that door to walk back in, it feels like an old friend. But anyway, that song was hard to sing, but it was such a part of my story that anytime I'm out on the road and they want to, hey, what song? Well, let me tell you, that Sound of Silence, because we all have been moved by that song.
Yeah.
And in different ways.
For sure.
Yep. Yeah.
I love that. But then going back to like the narrative of the whole album, I love too All the Poor and Powerless that you end the album on. That just like, if the whole thing, because in my brain when I listen to records too, I view things very like cinematically, right, narratively, and that's like the end of the movie, right? It's like it's joyful, it's triumphant, like after this like dark valley, right? You come out on top of the mountain, and yeah. So what was the reasoning behind including that song?
Well, again, that being the last song on the record, is Steve. I guess because he writes movies and he knows how to maneuver and bring it back and then do this with another character. He knows how to do that so well. But that first line, telling my story, guys, I cry. I get older and I just tear up. But it starts, all the poor and powerless and all the feel unworthy. All the thieves will come confess and know that they are worthy. That line is like, that's me. Yeah. That's us. And what a way to end a record. It's like we all have been there. Yeah. We all have been there. And let's all sing hallelujah. But when Steve chose that, I was wanting to soften the blow. Let's start the record with that so we could deliver demons and a few songs later. Let them know we're Christians, and then we'll do demons.
And then we'll do that one. That's funny.
But again, that the sequencing and to end it with that song, again, I keep going on and about Steve, but the gift that guy has to see the big picture, he's amazing.
One of the things John did with that arrangement is you get to the place kind of halfway through where you're ready for it to go big drums and all that stuff. And it said he takes everything away and just
sucks it out. Yep.
Yeah.
And man,
that was genius.
I love it so much, the way it ends.
Yeah. I mean, big shout out just to John. I was so impressed by knowing that he's producing and then like playing guitar, bass, drums, and just I mean, I think I wrote down like what tuba, saxophone, trombone, trumpet, French horn, like
That's what's crazy is he hears he thinks that horn section would be good here. Okay, and he just starts grabbing all.
I'll do it all.
It's all in the studio there. All these instruments are right there in the studio.
That's just crazy.
Unreal.
Yeah,
man.
No. So I was listening to the record, just wowed by your voice, Russ, and also just by John's ability as well. Steve, I want to know at what point did kind of the narrative? Did you start to notice there's a narrative to this here, or were there other covers that y'all were thinking about, and then you whittled it down to those, and you're like, there's the story here, or how did that process come about of figuring out the narrative in the sequencing?
Yeah, Russ, I don't think there were a few other songs that we were talking about to be little interstitials, but beyond that, I don't think we dropped any songs, did we?
I can't think. There might have been some that we threw in there, just hits from the 80s or something like that. But when we sat down and really started talking about the others, it didn't make sense, know, and they didn't make it to the final round at all.
Yeah, it was almost like if we didn't feel like it felt true to Russ and his story, we didn't think about him very long. Yeah.
Right. The ones
So that was
that
pretty
fit really
early
made
on in the
themselves evident.
process. Yeah, was that early on that you were like, "Oh, this is Russ's story," and if it doesn't fit, it was easy to
Yeah,
tell?
I think but Russ, I don't think we came up with the album title cover story for a while, right? That came later.
No,
That
yeah,
was actually
That's
a
wild
friend of
because
ours.
it
it was
fits
like
so perfectly. It feels like
several months into the thing because we were looking for a title of like how can we describe it, what title can we and we danced around and danced around. I think it was Troy or you, somebody
Yeah.
just said it's cover story, it's the cover of his life, it's cover story, and it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Like, yeah.
Right.
Yes. It was hiding in plain sight.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
Exactly.
Whose choice was the U2 BB King track?
Russ, that was
Who
yours.
threw that one in the mix?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
That
That's
was
a good
me.
one.
That of course, I love BB King. One of the highlights of my career. I guess I was probably 35, 38, something like that. And in Gothenburg, Sweden, they had a blues festival, and the promoter liked that blues side of my voice, and he put me on the lineup. And the show that night ended with BB King. And so
Amazing.
I went on like 3:00 in the afternoon,
Right.
and BB was like, 9:00 at night was like, yeah, I did a show with BB.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Technically,
we
you
totally
did.
count
Got to.
festivals.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
But I don't know. My world changed when Love came to town. I mean, and the way that the lyric and stuff was laid out, and then bringing it down. I was there when they crucified my Lord, but it's such an uplifting, positive song of what happens when love comes. And but I love the groove of that. I was raised Pentecostal. I mean, I love a good groove, and that song just. But the message of it is, I don't know. I just love that, and I wanted to do it. But I was kind of waiting for John and Steve to kind of give their approval, and they liked the idea. But yeah, I brought that one to the table.
Well, and
Good
again,
one.
speaking to the versatility of the record, like the fact that you brought in, the Stadium Rockers from across the pond and BB King in one song,
Right.
like
Yeah, it's like a 2-for-1. It's like,
yeah,
yeah.
the best.
So I had another question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but on Ordinary World is a certain Mr. Kevin Max singing on that as well.
Yeah.
He's got quite a distinct vibrato, so I was fairly certain that was him.
Well, he brought that song, didn't he, Steve?
He knows one of the writers.
Oh, cool.
But he brought it to the project.
Yeah, I think it might have been his idea. He and John have worked on a bunch of stuff before too, and so yeah, somewhere between the two of them, they cooked up that idea.
Nice.
Yeah. But then he sang on the back. I didn't even know he did it until, they sent it to me and listen. I go, that's Kevin. That's Kevin.
It's like his voice is not way up front in the chorus, but it's so distinctive that it makes the chorus, I think, come alive in a cool way.
100%.
Totally.
Of his voice too. Like he was there that night at the Chicago Bar after party, and he did like a couple of covers of a Leonard Cohen song and I can't remember, maybe a Bowie song or something. But
classy.
Voice.
Well, he was at the studio that day when we were looking at that song, and I laid down some stuff with it, the basic things like that, and I think that night I'd left and John got some singers with Kevin and put the backgrounds on it. And I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I saw Kevin there, but he's not going to sing on this record.
Right.
But, and then he just jumped in and did it. So I was so pleased. I was just so pleased that he would do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool. Well, gentlemen, we I think we're about to start wrapping up this conversation. We don't want to keep y'all too long. We obviously could do this for ever.
Russ, this is our, I mean, don't tell anybody else, but this is the most fun we've had on one.
All the press we've done. This is the
All right.
Oh, good.
Come back anytime you want.
That's what we like to hear.
Glad to hear it. So, Josh or TJ, do y'all have any final questions we want to ask? Anything else we got to get in under the wire?
Man, when can we have y'all back? That's my only question.
Yeah,
but
you guys got to come on for another album episode.
There you go.
We're always down.
That'd be nice.
That'll be the one where Russ does the phone book because he's already.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Done.
My phone book story. Yeah.
Do the phone book album. I'm like, you let this one come out first, and let's see how it does. Then we can talk about the phone book.
These are how these ideas happen, you know?
Yeah.
You got to follow it. You got to follow
Exactly.
Podcast one night.
Yeah.
We do need a producing credit on it, but that's all we need.
Right. Well,
we just need a vanity. We just need a vanity
go.
credit. That's all we want.
Island and
That's
Josh and CJ.
Perfect.
Consulting, even whatever.
Yellow paper
anything,
story
anything.
or whatever they call it. Yeah.
I do have a question. I do just want to say that I was trying to remain very professional as Russ was, and trying not to smirk too much when Russ was mentioning Meltdown multiple times with Steve on the podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, surely I'm not the only one catching this here, but it's like it felt like you were trying to make me laugh. So I tried to hold it together. Russ, I would just let the.
I didn't even put those songs together.
It's just in your subconscious. You see
You
Steve
saw
and you think
did,
about
and
it.
I'm just throwing it.
Think of Steve.
I tried to copyright the word, and evidently it was already taken.
You got to talk to Gene
Yeah.
Simmons about trademarking things.
Funny. But Russ, I would just love to know, so if anyone is discovering you through this record for the first time, where in your catalog would you point them to go next to dig into more Russ Taff?
Well, I mean, if this record intrigues you, there is another record that I did that was all these years later. I remember there's a self-titled record that I did that had I Still Believe on it. The record company was screaming, you know, Metals had just exploded. We got to make another record. We got to make another record. And I was 6 months sober, and I gotten out of treatment and not knowing if my marriage was going to survive, and just trying to go a day without drinking and learning how to live and going to AA meetings. And I couldn't write. I just, you know, it just takes a while for your brain to start firing again when you've been drinking hard. And so I'm in LA, and John Hyatt is a great writer, singer, and my AA sponsor. And I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, go to LA and just trust those around you. And I was lost. I mean, I was just lost and no direction, couldn't write. And Lynn Nichols, who has played with Steve, and he was A&R for that record. And I don't think he knew exactly. He just knew I couldn't write, and I was just stuck. I don't think I didn't tell anybody really that I had just gotten out of treatment. And he played the song "I Still Believe." Through the pain, through the heartache, through the lies, through the storms, through the cries, through the wars, I still believe. And I just started crying. And I said, if I could write a song right now, it would be that song. And then other songs began to come. Charlie Peacock brought Down in the Lowlands, you know, Hear My Cry, Save Me. And that was another heart cry, you know. But at the time, it was 1988, 87, 88. And there's a song on there that I wrote called This Healing Touch, and in writing it, begging Tori to stay. I mean, you don't realize that's what it is, but if you knew the story, I'm just saying, give me one more chance, you know, give me one more chance. But what was happening in the Christian marketplace was PTL. You guys probably aren't old enough to remember, but what was going on all across the country was, we're blessed, we're blessed, we're blessed. We are blessed. We don't deserve it, but yet we are blessed. And I've got this record coming out that I'm screaming, God save me, because I'm going under. And that was the worst listening party that I had ever been to where, I mean, like the with the Imperials, and my first solo record wins a Grammy, and medals were, but then all of a sudden this record, and nobody at Word likes it. They don't know what to do with it. It's like, and Tori told me going into this, she said, "Do you want to be this honest? Do you want to be this honest?" And I said, "I can't sing fluff right now. Yeah,
Right.
I
Yep.
it's got to be honest and real." And the listening party, everybody was just quiet. They would play a song, and then play another song, and everybody's just kind of looking around at each other. And I could see the radio people. What in the world are we going to pitch to radio? But all these years later, looking back, that was the most honest record I've ever made in my life. I mean, it was honest, it was real, it was pain. And in this Christian walk, we have times our world is just blown apart. But if I could recommend it of my catalog, I would go back and recommend that one. It's just a self-titled record, Russ Taff.
Right.
But I don't know. But it's Lauren Ballman, who he was high up in Word like that. And when he heard the record, and I just he went to his office and let everybody just kind of leave and that sort of thing. And he said, "Russ, it may not look like it right now." He said, "But eventually this will be a career record for you."
Yeah.
And about 5-6 years later, it was maybe 10 years later. But I can't tell you the pastors, assistant pastors, music directors that are older that says that record, that song, when I was going through a hard time, in my world, and I was in Bible school, didn't know if I was going to continue with the ministry, or my wife left me and I was still trying to serve. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people. My own pastor that I went to in Nashville here. I mean, he went. His wife left him, and he's pastoring a church, and she leaves, and it's over. They asked him to leave, but he knew God had called him, and it's like, where do I go? Where do I go? But he sang that song over and over, and every time I would see him, he'd go into that second verse, flat on my back, out to sea. But that song, I don't know, it just became something that the leaders of the church, those that had fallen on hard times, it was a song they could sing through all of this. I still believe. I'm going on too much about this, but just looking back over my career, that album was the most honest record I think I've ever made. Except for this one.
I
This
love
is
that.
pretty honest too. Especially coming out with Soft White Underbelly with this record.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't get any more honest than that.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love the self-titled album too. I agree. That's my other favorite of Russ's.
Nice.
Well, and I love the context for that album that you just shared with us, Russ, because coupling that with the interview and this amazing record, it's like, I think, I mean, we talk a lot on the podcast about authenticity and being able to believe the band or the artist that we're covering, and I just think artists exist to speak truth, whether it's about their own lives or telling stories that are going to resonate with others, whatever it is. And if deep down that you were telling your truth at that time, you could have made the commercial move, but you knew you kind of needed to dig deep and speak your truth, and you did, and you've done it again. So thanks for turning our listeners on to some amazing stuff if they haven't heard it already, and for sharing about your story, because I think that makes the music matter all the more.
And
so,
if you want to watch the Soft White Underbelly, it's a YouTube channel, Mark Leta, and it's called Soft White Underbelly, and he interviews people on Skid Row, and he had heard part of my story, and I don't know if he'd even interviewed another Christian, but he allowed me to just tell my story. It's been viewed about 500,000 times around the world, but yeah, it's it's painful. It's honest and real. But you know, our lives just get messy at times. They just get messy. But God.
Yeah, and you sharing your story, I think, actually helps. Like, you know, many hands make the work light, or whatever the expression is. Like, same thing with suffering, same thing with burdens and pain. So, you know, I was definitely very grateful to get to hear your story. And the music just really hits hard, man.
Yeah, and we need to take this opportunity to tell listeners of this show to listen to this album.
Yes, please.
Josh, do we know when we're releasing this episode?
I think it would probably just be a couple days after the record drops. So the record should be
that's perfect timing.
Just coming out and still fresh for you to go over and listen to it.
Well, we appreciate you guys plugging it like that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Yes, we very much appreciate you taking time out of your night to come talk to us. Is there anything else we need to tell people about? Not us, not Church Hymns Now, you guys. People hear enough of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we covered it all.
All right.
If you want it on vinyl, you can get it through russtaff.com, I think.
All right. Are there going to be any live shows, Russ? Any little one-offs or anything?
Well, I've been on the phone with it looks like the first actual tour. I'll do some one-offs here and there, but the first actual tour will be first part of July, and I'll be going to Norway and Sweden. They love the record over there, and so the promoter, I got a text from him today, want me to clear first couple of weeks of July because he wants me to. There's a couple of festivals, and then there's a band that I've used before, and so then I'll tour, a lot of cities in Norway and Sweden. That would be the first long tour, anyway.
Right.
The first being the key word.
First, exactly.
First tour. Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly. All right.
Hopefully there won't be a meltdown.
That is great. All right. And on that note, I think that's going to be all. That's going to be it from all of us here at Church Hymns Now. May all your favorite bands stay together, and peace out, Monfreres.